Hey, everybody, this is Mike Watley, and I am the North Carolina Republican chairman coming to you live from NCGOP studios. And tonight we've got a very special guest joining us on the chairman's chat, Madison Cawthorn, who just won a huge runoff election to replace Mark Meadows in the 11th district. Madison, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it's an honor to be here. I love getting to just, I especially love the people of Western North Carolina, but North Carolina is my home. I love getting to talk to all of you.
Excellent. Well, I'll tell you what, I think everybody across the state has certainly heard your name by now, just from reading all the press reports and everything from your win the other night. And why don't you just take a couple of minutes and tell everybody about yourself and where you came from?
Absolutely. Well, I was raised in these mountains. This is my home. It's a place I love. Raised with some great mountain values, raised in a fantastic family. Really just instilled a love of my country. And, I come from a very long line of very proud Marines. And so, we take duty very, very seriously in my household, just growing up. And so I believe that's probably the number one reason why I wanted to get involved in politics, because to me, it doesn't seem like this is politics. It more so seems like, this is an act of service to my fellow countrymen. And so, regardless, it comes with a lot of prestige, and it comes with money. But I think that's a reason why a lot of people get involved in politics. And I think that's a reason why we see a lot of problems in our country. There's these politicians who really want to be climbing the ladder of power and making sure that they can line their own pockets. And that's what made me want to get involved. I was just very fortunate enough to get engaged. And so my fiance and I are very excited about that. But obviously that comes with the normal questions of, what kind of family we want to have, how many children we want to have, and when we want to have our kids. And so after my fiance and I had that conversation, one night I was just outside sitting and just taking some time. And I started to think about, wow, is this a society I want to raise my family in? And, I had this terrible picture of, I have got an adolescent boy or girl who's just reading history for, really getting into their first history classes. And, I would hate for my child to look up at me and say, Daddy, why do we not have capitalism anymore? What was that like? And then, I have to hang my head in shame and say, we don't have capitalism anymore because good men refuse to stand up and they did nothing. That's all it takes for evil to prosper. And I didn't want to have that happen. So that's why I'm running for Congress now, because I don't believe there's any time to wait, and our country has got to be saved.
Well, I tell you what, I think that, one of the neatest stories is you being 24 years old, and you're going to be 25 by the time that you get sworn in. What's that been like for you coming in? And obviously this is first time in a political foray like this, to be able to be a voice for young Republicans. I hear all over the state, time and time again, that we're the old people's party. And, when I look at Nancy Pelosi having served for over 40 years, and Joe Biden having served for over 40 years, and Bernie Sanders having served for, and you go through the list of all the Democratic leaders that have been, in the House for 30, 40 years, all of them 60, 70 years old. You look to me like the voice for the young. You look like a fresh new voice that's coming into it. What's that been like?
It comes with definitely a sense of responsibility, but, to me, I feel like my purpose right now is to just lead a patriot revolution. Being born in the year I represent the very first year of Generation Z. And so that means that, I feel like I'm the retort to this generation that really, I feel like, in the 1970s when we established the Federal Department of Education, I think that turned most of our schools, especially our history classes, in primary schools, to become just kind of this indoctrination camp where the Democrats and this fringe left element started tilling this soil of fertile minds where they would be able to just launch what we're seeing today is what I believe is kind of a Marxist revolution. We're kind of seeing exactly the end result of what the world looks like and a generation looks like when we shift from giving spankings and discipline to just putting kids in timeout. We see all these children all over the country just really kind of just trying to air their frustrations because, they don't know how to do anything productive. They don't have the discipline to try and change something in a productive manner. Rather, they just want to go out and vandalize and be hoodlums. And so I believe that I do represent a voice for these young conservatives. And I want to make people know that, hey, it's not a bad thing to be a conservative. You're not going to lose friends. In fact, I think you'll actually gain friends. I feel like that's what our great president did for me just in 2016. Really feel like he kind of took the collar off for a lot of us young conservatives, because I don't know that right now is the time for genteel politics. I think right now is the time for all of us to stand up and fight.
Well, I think that President Trump has certainly brought that to town. And it's good that Republicans are standing up and fighting, and I think that he's leading the way. And what we've seen in a lot of the congressional races all across the country, even some of the governor's races across the country, is people want a fighter, and people want to know that you're going to represent them. When you look at the map right now across the country, we've got 34 seats that are currently held that by people in Democrats that are in districts that Trump won. And you, of course, are in a vacant seat that, of course, President Trump won. He actually got more votes out of the 11th district than any other district in North Carolina. So, what does that look like in terms of your ability to be part of a generational change there and be able to boot Speaker Pelosi, put her back out to pasture where she belongs?
Absolutely. I think our primary concern on a national level is making sure we take that gavel out of Nancy Pelosi's hands. It's time to send her back to her home city to start picking up the needles. I mean, she has done nothing but really destroy our country. And so I am very excited to be able to represent the 11th district. One thing that I think I'll be able to bring to the Republican Party as a whole is kind of this fresh new face of the Republican Party, a messenger to be able to take this message of conservatism, because I feel like for so long, especially what you touched on earlier, Chairman Whatley, is that, a lot of people do believe that the Republican Party is the party of, rich old white guys. But I mean, if you look at our candidacy here in North Carolina this year, we're going to have a 24-year-old disabled man on the ballot, along with an African-American man running for a lieutenant governor. And, I believe that we'll be some of the best orators that we've had in the GOP. And so I'm looking forward to being able to take this message of freedom, of personal responsibility, of just American greatness, and take it to a generation that's been deceived. And so while the North Carolina's 11th district did pump out the most votes for President Trump in 2016, I suspect that we will do it again. But I would love to help lead the efforts of President Trump's team to be able to really win the millennial vote here in North Carolina.
Yeah, I think that's going to be absolutely crucial. So you mentioned your fiance, who is an absolutely lovely, lovely lady. So I have to ask, how did you meet her, and how did you get so lucky to get her to say yes when you asked her?
You know what? I'll tell you, it actually all goes back to a Russian collusion. So back several years ago, I was having a very dangerous reconstructive back surgery. And so because of that, there was a chance that I may not be able to travel again after that, or be able to get on a plane ever again after that. And so I took that moment, and I decided to go on a last trip with several of my brothers. And so we went to Norway, we got on a boat, and we went into St. Petersburg. And so while there, I ran into another American. So obviously we hit it off because we're from the same country. And let me tell you, I'm in a significant amount of pain while on this trip. My spine was very nearly broken. And so this was it was a kind of what I thought was going to be my last vacation I ever get to take. And so I was talking to this guy. He was an Army captain. And anyways, he was just getting out of the military and heading back to Florida. And so years passed. My surgery goes just fine, thank God. Many prayer warriors got me through that. And then I'm down in Miami for work. And so anyways, he decides to send me a message. He says, "Hey, Madison, you should come and see me." And so I decided to go hang out with him. And we have this wonderful moment where he says, "I want you to come do a CrossFit competition," which is just basically a workout competition on his team. And so I tell him, like, "Todd, that doesn't make any sense. I'm in a wheelchair. I'm not going to be very good on that team." And he says, "Well, why don't you just do the pull-up section?" And I was like, "Oh, I can do that. It's no problem." And so I go to this CrossFit competition, which ended up actually being a farce. He was just trying to put me and this wonderful young woman who'd go on to soon to become my wife, put us in the same room and see what happened. And so I got to meet her. She was incredible. She is actually a CrossFit champion. She's one of the top 100 fittest people in the country. Also, she actually just finished her state boards for anesthesia. And so right now, I believe she's actually in a C-section surgery delivering 2 twins. And so she's doing an incredible job. She's a wonderful woman. And I can't wait to have her as what I'll call her as the first lady of the 11th district.
Outstanding. Well, I think that's just a fantastic story. Another piece of what we're talking about here is you going to Congress, and obviously would be one of the youngest members there, but you're one out of 435. And, that it takes a while for folks to kind of figure out their way around up there. You've got a number of good mentors from North Carolina that will be able to show you around and help you out. But everybody seems to really want to pick one or two issues that they're going to kind of focus on and say, this is where I want to make an impact as a member of Congress. And sometimes they make it legislatively, and sometimes they make it using the membership as a platform to go out and work on other things. What are the one or two issues, three issues that you really see that motivate you in terms of wanting to take on this leadership mantle and go up to Washington and have an impact?
Well, you know what? I do know that a lot of freshman congressmen are normally frustrated from what I hear because they don't seem to be able to get anything done their first year. But I believe Western North Carolina deserves significantly more than that. And so I'm not going to accept that. One of the great advantages of my youth is that, I've been raised during this kind of advent of social media. So to me, sharing compelling content on social media is just second nature. And so I believe that I'll be able to have such a large platform that I won't kind of have to go through this minutia of career politics of, trying to climb the ladder and gain influence. I'll just be able to gain the influence very similar to the way Donald Trump has, because he has such an incredible social media engine. He's able to compete in this new town square. He's able to circumvent the media and circumvent kind of this process because, a lot of people were telling me, well, don't you kind of want to wait your turn? And I would always shake my head and say, wait my turn for behind who? Who is this arbitrary line that we're standing in, and who thinks that our country has time to wait for just kind of these systems that have failed us in the past? And so I'm very excited for North Carolina as a whole because, I think we've got, as you were saying, I've got a lot of great mentors in the North Carolina delegation. But I'm looking forward to going up to Washington to be able to work on some legislation. And, I want to take account of the battlefield that I'm given and to determine my strategy. And so if we're in the majority in Congress, I'd really like to definitely take advantage of that and be the face of healthcare reform for the Republican Party. I think for too long, we've kind of been the party of no without having any alternative solutions. But now, there's been a lot of great ideas put forth and some that I've kind of coalesced because, I have felt the impact of high healthcare costs significantly in my life. And I realize how important that is to so many Americans. And so I want to go up there and introduce some legislation that's going to introduce some more free market capitalism. Because, here in Western North Carolina and North Carolina as a whole, there's a virtual monopoly held on us by Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And so I'm looking forward to be able to go up and try and get some new legislation to decrease regulation that's all around the healthcare industry to be able to bring prices down. And Chairman Wally, I hope you'll indulge me, but I'm going to use a very ultra simplified analogy to be able to explain it. But, where I'm sitting here in Henderson County on the far western side of North Carolina, and where I am sitting right now, I can pick up my phone and there are 6 different pizza companies that will deliver to this house. And so, they are all having to be able to compete for my dollars. So that means each of these pizza companies is trying to get me the best food for the best price as fast as they can. And although it's much more difficult than providing a pizza, I'll tell you, I think we can apply the same solutions to healthcare. But Mr. Wally, before you go, I also want to say that if for whatever reason we're in the minority, which I'm telling you we're not going to be, we're going to take this house back. My main concern is going to be infrastructure and primarily high-tech infrastructure. When I'm traveling these counties out west in the far western counties of North Carolina, especially in this age of COVID-19 when we're having to shut so much stuff down, having access to broadband internet is imperative. And so, when I go to Cherokee County or Graham County and I have to hear about these parents who are having to drive their kids to sit outside of a McDonald's just so they can connect to the Wi-Fi to be able to complete their schoolwork, I think that's an absolute farce for our country. Not so long ago, we used to be the envy of the world when it came to infrastructure. And I want to retake that title. And so, I'd like to introduce something like the 1930s Electrification Act to bring, but for broadband internet, to bring internet to everyone in North Carolina.
That's a fantastic way to look at it. And I really think it's something that's going to land very well with the new Republican majority. You mentioned Mark Robinson and the great job that he did in his primary and the great job that he's doing running around the state right now. And it's what's really cool is that we have a Republican team. I think when you look at our candidates on the Council of State, you look at all of our folks who are running for Congress, either as our incumbents who are running for reelect, as well as the group like yourself who are non-incumbents. We've got an amazing group of candidates that came out of this primary, and I really like the concept. I push very hard on our judges of getting them to run as a slate. we push very hard with all of our counties and our districts to be able to put together events where we can get people, to pull together. But when you look at your ability to help a Dan Forrest, a Mark Robinson, a Dale Falwell, in terms of being able to turn out votes across the 11th district, that's pretty cool. Tell me about the relationships you've already struck up with our other candidates just over the course of, your primary and runoff, and what conversations you've had since.
Well, I'll tell you, Mr. Falwell was kind enough. I believe he was the first person that's going to be on the ballot for North Carolina as a whole to actually give me a phone call after my primary victory. And so, I really appreciated that. I'm looking forward to being able to work with him. He's been a great mentor, talking about just different terms of messaging and helping me get more studied up. But the person I've got the greatest relationship with is going to be the Dan Forrest team. We've got an event coming up at Granddad's Orchards out here in Henderson County coming up on July 4th. Just to be able to coalesce as a team to get a lot of people out here, because one thing that we have going on for us in the 11th district is we saw during the primary that this is a movement. We have a very unified, and just based off the margin of victory we had in our primary for this congressional seat, we realized that the Republican Party here in the 11th district specifically is coalesced into a functioning unit. We have to turn people away from our events because, with all the Governor Cooper's ridiculous guidelines that we have to have on us, we actually are almost always above capacity at all of our events. And so I'm looking forward to being able to bring that kind of power and that kind of a voting block and that kind of enthusiasm to the other candidates, specifically, whether we're talking about Dan Forrest and Mark Robinson and Mr. Falwell and just everyone across the state, because, if it all starts locally. I'm obviously very focused on the national stage because that's where I'm going to have to do my fighting on behalf of the 11th district. But you know what? Local politics matter, and winning the North Carolina state is so imperative, both to our president and to our constituents.
Yeah, and you did such a fantastic job. When people talk about you winning all 17 of the full counties that you had in the district, that really speaks to the grassroots movement that you've got, and the fact that with us being in Governor Cooper's lockdown and us not having the ability to go knock on doors, that we're having to reach out to folks electronically and we're having to use social media. I know we at the NCGOP are very happy that we built the TV studio last year. Didn't really plan on spending 4 to 5 hours a day in it like I have been. But thank God it's there, right? And we, through our social media, have ramped up. Our online fundraising is going very well. Our Facebook has never been better. Our Twitter has never been better. So talk about being that millennial candidate, that social media candidate, and how it's really helped you to be able to move around the district, even when you can't do it physically because of the lockdown.
Oh, well, you know what? I think it was Hal Weatherman who gave a great analogy several months ago when he was saying that, you think about the punching power a single man has or a single woman has. But then you put her on a platform that's like social media. And, we all have our spheres of influence. And then she goes out and she influences 10 more of her friends. And they go out and influence 10 more of their friends. Well, all of a sudden, that lone voice, that sole one single amount of punching power is turned into 100, in a day, within an hour. And so, something I really like about being so young is, as I was saying, growing up during the advent of social media, it's something that's just second nature for me to use. And so I'm looking forward to being able to turn the Republican Party to become more effective on that, because right now that is the new town square. I think one of the number one priorities of the Republican Party needs to be going forward, especially, in this next decade, is going to be fighting back against big tech censorship, trying to suppress conservative voices. People always want to say that we're trying to suppress voters because we want IDs to be able to go in to vote just so we know who's voting at our polling stations. But they're saying that it's not censorship, it's not suppressing votes to censor our voices on the new town square that is social media. And I'm talking about, of course, Facebook. That's where the majority of our high propensity voters for the Republican Party are, but also being able to compete on things like Instagram and Twitter. And so, I think that's going to be very imperative for the Republican Party moving forward, is to be able to compete there. Because right now, I've got to tell you, and I'm sure you agree with me, this is not so much a war of policy anymore. I think this next decade is going to be a culture war. And if we don't fight it with all our heart, if we don't try and win the hearts and minds of the future generations, this under 40 crowd, then we're going to start losing every election we ever run in.
Yeah, when you look at this election cycle, it really does boil down to a battle between socialism and capitalism. I think that there's a number of other very big picture fights. The divide that we have right now between Republicans and Democrats is as big as we've ever seen it, certainly since Jimmy Carter versus Ronald Reagan. And I think that we look at the tools that we've developed with the online recruiting, online voter registration. We're getting volunteers that are coming in through our online efforts, and we're doing online, Trump Victory Leadership Initiative trainings. You look at the Zooms and the conversations that we've had there, running all of our district conventions digitally across the state. And now, unfortunately, because of Governor Cooper, we're going to have to run our state convention virtually as well. But one of the things that I'm excited about is we were able to switch over on a 24-hour notice from being a physical campaign to a virtual campaign. I know Trump Victory is very proud of the fact that they've done the same. These are tools that we're not going to put back in the closet when that COVID curtain comes back up. We're going to keep these in our toolkit. We're going to make sure that we're communicating with people all across the state. And I love that you are such a champion of it and really kind of the face of where we're going to be in this sphere for the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Absolutely. And you know what? I just want to go ahead and commend your efforts and everybody on the North Carolina GOP team and all of our county chairs across all 100 counties, because you're right. I mean, so many people were so motivated. I know even myself was, whether you're talking about the prayer breakfast that happens directly before the convention or the convention itself. It's such a great gathering of patriots that creates so much momentum. And, Mr. Whatley, I was reviewing what you all were planning on doing for this, and you were abiding by every single guideline set by the federal government and by the state government to a T. And so I'll tell you, I refer to him affectionately as King Cooper, because, we have a man who is in our house in Raleigh, the governor's mansion, who is trying to act like he's a tyrant, who's someone coming in who's trying to just using this terrible crisis that we all find ourselves in, both economically and the human suffering that's going on with COVID-19. And he's using it for political gain. I'm telling you, if that does not paint a clearer picture of the difference between our two parties, one that cares about the individual and our individual property rights and our rights as an individual just all across this country, versus somebody who will go to no lengths. There is nothing that they will not do to win an election. And so I'll tell you, the Democrats are scaring me. I think they've lost complete control. People like AOC, people like the Black Lives Matter movement, they have taken complete control. That's not Nancy Pelosi, not Roy Cooper, not Joe Biden can rein them in. And I'm telling you, we are watching a Marxist revolution. And unless we all stand up and fight, unless we all get inside of this patriot revolution and start to take this fight directly to them, we're going to be raising our children and grandchildren as a socialist country.
I think that's exactly right. Especially when you talk about what happened with the riots here in North Carolina and across the country. That we did not have Governor Cooper in control. We did not have Governor Cooper pushing law and order and trying to work with law enforcement and community leaders and the small business owners who have been affected by the rioting and the looting and the vandalism. Instead, he was meeting with protesters. He was out marching with protesters.
With no mask on. Let's make that clear. With no mask on.
That is correct. Yes. And really the picture that we see between Republicans wanting to say, of course we support free expression. Of course, we support free speech. We had 500 protesters at the NCGOP headquarters, but they were peaceful, and we didn't have any problem with them coming out there to express their views. But when we start getting the vandalism and the looting and the fires and riots, things like that, we really do expect our leaders to stand up. And I think across the country, Nancy Pelosi and the congressional Democrats have really applauded the violence and the looters. And I think it's important to have patriots like you who are going to be in Congress and be able to say, we're not going to go down that road.
Well, Mr. Whatley, I think that's absolutely correct. It's in a time of crisis, law and order is the most important. I think that's a paraphrase quote I'm stealing from our beloved Lieutenant Governor. But I'll tell you, you know what? It now is a time for a compassionate leader to stand up. I mean, I feel like the majority of America is on its knees right now. They're hurting. They're confused. They don't know what they're allowed to say, or they don't know where they're allowed to go. And their hand is out. And I believe that the GOP is going to be there. The Republican Party is going to be there to grab them by the hand and say, let's rise together. Let's attack this head on, and let's move forward as a country who accepts one another for our differences. and works hard to make sure that the American dream is alive and well for future generations, and that we lead the world on the cultural front, on an economic front, to build a better place, to better heights, so we can have more prosperity, more freedom, and more joy in our lives.
Yeah, I've been talking with a number of national Republican leaders all across the country over the last several days as we've been going through our paces with our convention and what we're doing. And I keep hearing from folks, hey, it's a downtime. People are depressed. We're not sure how the president's going to do. And I've told every single one of them, then come here to North Carolina, because let me tell you what's going to happen. Donald Trump is going to win North Carolina by 5 points. Tom Tillis is going to be reelected and go to the Senate. Dan Forest is absolutely going to be our next governor. And we are going to win with a solid slate of congressional candidates, our Council of State candidates. We're going to take back our Supreme Court and Court of Appeal seats that we so desperately need to restore balance to our court tier. And really, you can watch the news, you can watch the social media, and yes, it will drag you down and it will make people tired. But you know what? As soon as we walk outside and it's a beautiful day here in North Carolina, I am invigorated. I like to get out. I like to get in my truck and drive around and meet with people. But man, I'll tell you what, if people need a pick-me-up on the Republican side, they need to talk to you. They need to talk to me, because we are going to win here in North Carolina. I think it's a fantastic setup that we've got for us here. I am so excited about what you bring to the table as a candidate and having you in Congress representing the 11th district. So let me wrap up with this question, which is you've got about 20,000 people all across North Carolina watching this right now, and it's the first chance for them to see you and to hear from you. What can those people do to help you, to support you in your race? Because you are going to have, a contested race. And, my theory on politics is you run unopposed or you run scared. And so I think that, what I've heard from you about your ground game is very, very positive and very strong. But what can volunteers and activists and donors from all across North Carolina do to plug in with your movement and your campaign and help you?
Well, it's a threefold approach. So number one, I know you were talking about our ground game, and our ground game has gotten a significant amount of attention, even on a national level, because we affectionately refer to our volunteers as our army. I mean, it is a group of 220 volunteers who are motivated, who have came in for training, and who go out and they create artificial momentum, which translates into real momentum. And I think that's why you saw us winning by such a large margin in our primary. And so, I love all of my volunteers. So if you would like to join that movement, if you'd like to have boots on the ground experience, knowing how to run a campaign, knowing that you are actually trying to save your country and instead of just sitting back and complaining about it, we'll definitely have you. Yeah, we're here at all 17 westernmost counties in the district. And so if you want to come out, we're more than happy to have you. Two, we've got to have bullets to fight the battle, and bullets cost money. And so anybody who can, and of course, when I say bullets, I'm talking about being able to push out our agenda, our mission statement, because, I think it would be I think that being able to get our message out to people is what is the most effective. And so to be able to do that, if you want to go on to MadisonCawthorn.com, it's MadisonCawthorn.com. There's a big donate tab. It gives you very clear instructions of how to send a check. Or you can go to the Win Red account, which I get 100% of the proceeds from. And it's a great system that was set up by Eric Trump, so I love using it. But a third, and this is not necessarily to be able to help me, Chairman Wally, so I hope you don't mind that I digress a little bit. I'm talking to all of us as Republicans. We are looking at the state of our country, and I believe all of us are disheartened by it. Again, as you were saying, if you go outside and you enjoy the outside world, you realize that, the country is it's not that bad of a place. It's incredible. We're the most fortunate people in the world. We've won the lottery to be American citizens. But I'll tell you, if you watch the news, you can see that there is a conceited and there is an extraordinarily well-funded movement to destroy the America that we all know and love. And so my call to arms to all of you is to no longer be the silent majority. But it is to stand up and stand for what you believe in, to speak out against this tyranny that we're all facing. Because, ladies and gentlemen, let me be very blunt with you. They are coming for your children, and they are coming for your prosperity, and they are coming for your happiness. Because for whatever reason, they have been twisted into this demented movement that is trying to take away all that is good and bright in this world. And so no longer sit back. As I said earlier, all it takes for evil to prosper is for good men to do nothing. And so I think that right now is the time, no matter if you are 15 years old or if you're 80 years old, stand up. You have a voice and you have a sphere of influence. Use it.
Well, I could not agree more, and I can't thank you enough for coming on the Chairman's Chat, and really look forward to being on the road with you and seeing you get up into Congress and do such a fantastic job. To all of our viewers here tonight, thank you again for joining us for another great version of the Chairman's Chat. And join us next week. We've got a really cool guest. Is going to be Tommy Hicks, who's the co-chair of the RNC, and he's going to be able to talk to us about how the Trump campaign is doing nationally, as well as the RNC convention and what the plans are with where we're going there in Jacksonville. So tune in on next Tuesday for our Chairman's Chat, and everybody have a great night. Thank you.